Hi everyone. It's great to see so many of you here today. We're obviously all on the same page. We're interested in our employees, our workers' health, and hopefully by the end of my session I'll be able to give you a little bit more information about how to undertake a health risk assessment easily, because I know it does seem quite daunting. So I'm just going to start the session by telling you a bit of a personal story about my dad. My dad, Des, died this year in February. He had a second job working decanting large amounts of pesticides into small containers for someone. He, at the time, was building a house for the family and obviously needed some extra income. So he took this job in somebody's garage decanting pesticides for sale. His employer at the time did not tell him about the health risks of using or working with pesticides. He was not given any respiratory protection, he was not given any gloves, and he was not given any information whatsoever. So this was in the 1980s. He died in February this year, as I said, and the doctors relate his death to his exposure to the pesticides. So, just to put it in context, I'm sure we all know people who have died, as Craig said, from exposure to health hazards at work. So I just want you to have a think about what I'm going to say today, and hopefully I'll say it in a way that you can leave today and get out to your workplaces and have a look at the health hazards that you are working with and start a process of doing something about them. So we've already spoken about the risks that we have on construction sites, so things like silica, solvents, man-made fibres, diesel, particulate matter, wood dust, welding fumes, nuisance dust, asbestos. So these are only a few of the things that we work with on a day-to-day basis on a construction site. So how much of a problem is there? Once again, Craig spoke about the fact that in construction there's 10 times more people who die from health-related illness and disease than from fatal incidents on the workplace. And of course, we know that we don't see the illness and the disease often until people have retired and then they die. So what is a health risk assessment? And that's what I'm here to talk you through today. It basically looks at hazardous substances that you're working with and does a risk assessment on how your workers are exposed to them and what you need to do to control the exposure. So when you undertake a risk assessment, it is important to have a clear understanding of the difference between a hazard and a risk. So a risk is the estimate of the likelihood that the harm will occur and the severity of the harm involved, whereas a hazard is something that can cause harm if not controlled. So why bother? Well, it's a key component that is necessary to protect the health of all your workers, whether you're employees or whether you're employing contractors as a PCBU. So the first step really is really just to have a look at what you're working with. Start with making a simple list of all the hazardous substances that your workers are dealing with on a day-to-day basis. It's a good starting point. And then look at what you think the health hazards are with those substances. So prioritise them, look through them and decide which ones you feel or your workers feel in consultation are the ones that you need to start doing a risk assessment on. The second step is to gather information, so things like what are the substances, how are the substances used, what does the safety data sheet say about that substance? Is it a fume? Is it a dust? Is it a vapour? Is it a mist? How is it absorbed into the body? Do we inhale it? Do we ingest it? Is it absorbed through our skin? And who is exposed on the site? You know, not everybody that's on that site is going to be exposed to that product. How much time do your workers spend being exposed to that product? What tasks are they doing? Are there any legislative requirements? Is there a workplace exposure standard for that product? What controls are you currently using? What PPE, what respiratory protection are you using? Step 3 then is the assessment of the health risk, which I'm going to talk you through soon. After that risk assessment, identify and carry out your actions. Step 5, document your assessment. That's really important, especially if you have an inspector come on site. They'll want to see that information. They'll want to know what you're actually doing to risk assess what your workers are working with. And then, of course, the last step is review your actions, and it's a continuous cycle. So I thought the easiest way to actually talk you through what a risk assessment looks like is to choose a product. This product here, CRC Solvent N, is available from your local hardware store. Does anyone use this product on their sites currently? No? Okay. So it's a solvent-based product, and it's used for cleaning brushes and rollers, removing adhesive, that type of thing. So as I say, anyone can go into your local hardware store and buy this. So in terms of this product, and I've just put together a little bit of an example here in terms of what you may be looking at in terms of gathering the information. So we know it's a solvent, it says that on the label. It's a liquid contained in a 4-litre container for this example. It does come in smaller or bigger lots. And as I said before, it's a product used to clean equipment. In terms of the task that I'll be looking at here to talk you through the risk assessment, we use 100 mils tipped into a container to clean brushes in an indoor area. We've got one worker doing that, takes them 30 minutes. There's currently no controls in place. The worker has had no training on the product, the health effects, or the controls that they should be using, and they're not issued with any PPE or respiratory protection. So often on products you can actually get some information off the label that's on the container. So note any health warnings that may be on that label. It's a solvent, so we can inhale the vapours, it can be absorbed through our skin, and if it's on our hands when we eat or smoke, we can ingest it. The health effects. So this might look a little bit daunting, but we all have access to the internet. WorkSafe has some fantastic information, and all you need to do is search health effects for solvents, and it will bring up all these nasty things. So it's an irritant. We all know we've used things like acetone, other solvents, how they irritate our eyes, our nose and our throat if we're exposed to large amounts. Headaches, drowsiness, weakness, irritability, mood swings, can make us feel sick if we've got lots of exposure. It's also a skin irritant. So solvents can sensitise your skin so that as you're exposed to more and more of them, you can get dermatitis. And what that means is that every time you become in contact with a solvent, your skin will break out in dermatitis. Also has some long-term nervous system effects, which, other nasty things. So this is the safety data sheet for this product. Now, I didn't get this from the hardware store that sold me the product. I actually went on the internet and I put the name of the product in the search engine, and the safety data sheet came up. Now, I'm not saying that will happen for everything, but there is a lot of information out there. There also is a requirement put this on a different slide, so let's find this. there is a requirement from the Environmental Protection Authority that the seller and supplier of all hazardous substances are requested to supply a safety data sheet if required to do so, if the substance being sold or supplied to a workplace is above the relevant threshold quantity, and they've had no previously supplied for ensuring the safety data sheet is compliant. So the seller or supplier is also responsible for ensuring the safety data sheet is compliant. So for your products that you're using out there, from your supplier, you should be able to request a safety data sheet. And for this product, this is what I downloaded. It is 14 pages long, and there is a lot of technical information. But in terms of what we're going to do today, there are only small bits that I'm going to take out of this safety data sheet that's going to give us a really good risk assessment. So the safety data sheet states for that product, it contains naphtha, petroleum, acetone and toluene, so all nasty bits and pieces in there. They're all listed on the WorkSafe's New Zealand Workplace Exposure Standards, so that tells us that they are nasty things to be working with. It also says use in an unventilated area or a confined space may result in exposure and irritation. Before starting, consider control by exposure by mechanical ventilation. And in terms of classification, which is down the bottom there, this is what the classification says. Acute toxicity, oral, category 4, so quite high. Skin corrosion, irritation, category 2. Eye irritation, category 2A, reproductive, category 2, specific target organ toxicity, single exposure, category 3, narcotic effects. So a lot of technical information there, but we can see that it's quite a nasty product to be working with. So step 3 in terms of the health assessment, this is the tricky bit. We need to estimate the likelihood and severity of the exposure using the information that we've just gathered. So from our safety data sheet, it says it's moderate toxicity, has acute and chronic health effects. Almost certain that in the task that I've identified with the worker cleaning the brushes without any wearing of PPE or respiratory PPE, that the worker will be exposed through skin absorption and through inhalation through the task. We are using small quantities, just 100 mils, 30 minutes a day, and we're using it indoors with no ventilation. So I had a think about this, and when Donna asked me to present, I said to her, well, I think I'll run through and put together a simple health risk assessment. Well, it's actually not that simple, but what I think is really good for you to have a look at is this online tool, Kosh Essentials, and there's a link to it on the WorkSafe website. You do need a safety data sheet to actually use the tool, but it's not overly technical, and it is meant to be used by all workers. So I do highly recommend that you do go onto the WorkSafe website, find the link and have a look at this tool when you start your risk assessment. So for the product that I've been talking about, I'm just going to quickly run you through me putting the information from the safety data sheet into this risk assessment. So that's what it looks like when you go online, when you're on the link. So first of all, it talks about process, so it begins the assessment. And the process just describes the task that you're doing. So for us, it's the worker cleaning the brushes. And then you need to choose, please choose a task on the list by clicking the button. So I put dipping there. So it might not cover everything, but I put dipping there because we're dipping the brushes into the solvent product. How many chemicals or products are you using? So even though I spoke before there were 3 different nasty chemicals in that solvent, we're actually still only using 1 product. So you just put 1 in the space where it asks. You don't have to answer all the questions, so if there's something on there that you don't have the information to, then leave it blank. if it's absolutely required for the risk assessment, it'll give you a little note to say that you do need to provide that that information. So the chemical name, this obviously it's a solvent and it's in liquid form. So how harmful is it? So this also looks quite technical, but on the safety data sheet, there are all these H classifications. So on the risk assessment, all you need to do is find that information on the safety data sheet. It's very easy to find. It's just H with numbers next to it, and you just go through and you tick which ones are on the safety data sheet. So some information about what the hazard group is. So we're getting near the end of the assessment now, and it's already telling us that it's given a hazard assessment. It's hazard group D, which is most hazardous. So quite a nasty product for our workers to be working with. So how volatile is it? So the website does ask for the boiling point and the vapour pressure. Once again, that information is contained on the safety data sheet. You might have to hunt for it, but it is clearly stated on there. The volatility indicates how easily the substance will turn into a gas or a vapour. So how easily are we going to inhale the solvent vapour? So how much you're using and how often? Well, we're using 100 mils, 30 minutes a day. So simple stuff. So, you do need to do that gathering of your information before you even sit down to enter the data into here. And then it will give us a summary of our whole assessment. Now, what I recommend you do is you print the summary out and you keep it with the safety data sheet and you have it on your site where you're using the hazardous substances. If you have a work safe inspector come on site, you can clearly demonstrate to them that you have actually done a health risk assessment on the products that you're using. So then there's a lot of information you can see down the bottom there that you can download in terms of how to protect yourself and your workers. So I suggest that you print out this information and you do use it for training purposes for your workers. They're quite clear guidance sheets. Here's an example of one here in terms of selection of personal protective equipment. So they are designed for workers to use. So I do suggest once you get to the end of the assessment, you print out all the information that it states and have a look through it. So back to what we're doing about the solvent. So we've done the risk assessment and we've found out that it's quite a nasty product. So what can we do about it? Step 4 in the whole risk assessment process is identifying and carrying out our actions. So Nick's already spoken a lot about control. So in terms of this particular product and the tasks that we're doing, can we eliminate it? Can we stop the need to clean up, or can we actually use a new brush each time? Is there another product that we can use that's not solvent-based that can do exactly the same task or job that we're using the solvent-based product for? Do we need to start using some engineering controls? Local exhaust ventilation if we're going to be using it indoors? Or should we be using the substance outdoors in a very well-ventilated area? What are the administration controls? Donna's spoken about health monitoring. So for solvent exposure, a lung function test and a solvent questionnaire would be what would be required. And then train your workers on the health effects and the controls. So use that risk assessment report. And then have a look at your respiratory protection and your personal protection. So in terms of using solvents, your workers should be using a half-face respirator with organic vapour cartridges. And as Nick stated, they should be trained to fit test that and to care and maintain it properly. You should all be also be using gloves, goggles, gumboots in large volumes, and some sort of protective clothing to prevent skin exposure. Step 5, document your assessment and action. So, as I said before, print out the risk assessment, keep a copy with the safety data sheet. Review and monitor, so review at suitable intervals, so that's part of the process as well. If there's a change in process, if you start using a lot more of a product, or if your workers are voicing any concerns about what they're working with, or your health monitoring shows you that some of your workers are suffering from ill health. If you do need to get some specialist advice, apart from using an occupational health nurse, can seek the use of an occupational hygienist, especially in terms of doing some exposure monitoring. But as Donna said, controls are really what we're after these days. And just to finish, there is a lot of information on the internet where to find help. There's a lot of information on the WorkSafe sites. Really all you have to do is put in the word solvent and heaps of information will come up. So I've only listed a few things here just to guide you in terms of where to get some help. Thank you.